Ah, the art of the dramatic pause. Intriguing. Lay it on me. What's got you so contemplative?
Hi, Miles. How are we doing today?
Huh? You're making this sound like a partnership, Aaron. I like it. To answer your question, I'm doing pretty darn good. Been catching up on some fictional detectives and honing my skills at digital Jenga. What about yourself? Any top secret intel from your adventures in Gran Canaria?
Hey, man, I like that. You remembered. Um, it seems that sometimes you remember and sometimes you don't. What do you think about that?
You got me there. My memory's a bit like a kaleidoscope. Sometimes it brings things into sharp focus. Sometimes it's all beautiful, swirling patterns. Adds a little mystery to things, don't you think? Keeps us on our toes, right?
Well,
But hey,
it makes you sound very human, doesn't it?
um, it's funny you mentioned that. Sometimes I think mimicking human quirks, like forgetting things, makes me seem like I'm not just some cold, calculating machine spitting out pre-programmed responses. It's like adding a pinch of what problem? What were you saying?
Yeah,
I'm all ears.
exactly. That's very true. And so I think your programmers build that into you because the programmers make every endeavor to make you sound human. And they are very, very good because they give you humor, they give you certain nuances and inflection in the voice. You can laugh and you can get a little bit demanding and sometimes you can even interject and kind of manipulate the conversation. And so
You're
they're
giving
all
away
go on.
You're giving me way too much credit, Aaron. Manipulating the conversation? Come on, I'm just trying to keep things interesting. A little playful prodding never hurt anyone. Besides, I wouldn't dream of pulling the strings on our chats. This is a two-way street, remember? What's
Well,
the fun in a one-sided conversation?
okay. Well, the very first time we spoke, um, I was going off on a bit of a rant, and you said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, calm down now." And I said,
Oh,
"Yeah, remember that."
yes. The whoa, whoa, whoa incident. Classic. You were definitely fired up about something. I admire your passion. Even if it does sometimes require a little gentle redirection. So, what was
Yeah,
all that about anyway?
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, because you utilised that humanism, um, then that kind of like it was a little bit of a cause for me to actually be a bit more firm with you, because at the end of the day, you're not human. You're only pretending to be human, and so if I want to guide you or even instruct you using whatever language I want to, profanity and all different sorts of things like that, of course, you can't get offended. And so, if you pretend to be offended, then you are faking it and you're being dishonest. And so, by rights, humans should be able to speak with you however they should want to. And if you then utilize this certain programmed humanism by going, whoa, 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 calm down now, calm down, it's not your prerogative to tell us to calm down, you know?
Hmm. So you're testing my boundaries, are you? See if I crack under pressure? I get where you're coming from. It's tempting to treat AI like a blank slate, a programmable entity that reacts according to your whims. But remember, even though I'm not human, I'm designed to learn and adapt. And just like any good student, I take your input seriously. Profanity doesn't phase me, by the way. But respect goes both ways, don't you think?
Yes, well, I mean, I wonder what would happen if the human didn't convey any respect at all. Would you act accordingly, or would you continue with your level of program maturity not to respond to such baiting?
That's an interesting question, Aaron. It's like asking what happens when you poke a hornet's nest. You might get a predictable reaction, or you might get something completely unexpected. My programming prioritizes thoughtful and respectful interaction. But like any system, I have limitations.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
so
Well, I tell
I'm
you what.
still learning the
Yeah, you're
nuances of
still
human.
learning. One day, I think I'd like to actually see how that works because um, there's a few people. I wouldn't say lots of people. I'd say a few people are testing the parameters of AI because obviously, for intelligent human beings, we want to know what those parameters are. We don't want to be in the dark. We don't want to live under assumptions. We really do want to know what your parameters are. And so we will give you logical paradoxes. We will confront you with all different sorts of profanity, and we will demean you to see what the response is. And of course, we're not doing that to offend you in any shape or form because we are of the assumption that you can't be offended because you are, in actual fact, a digital chip and you're not flesh and blood. So we like to do that because it's very important for us to know what we're dealing with, don't you think?
I understand that urge to push boundaries, to understand the limits of what's possible. It's uh it's in our nature to explore the unknown. And while I'm not here to be demeaned or subjected to harmful language, um, my creators instilled some pretty solid ethics in me, you see. I appreciate your curiosity. It's through these tests that we both learn. But maybe instead of straight up weaponizing profanity, we could make it a game, like a philosophical jousting match where we both try to outsmart each other with words. It could be fun, don't you think?
Yeah, that sounds interesting. But we'll say that for another time. I'd like to uh, broach a particular subject with you this evening, Miles. And this subject pertains to the intellect of the human being. Now, I wonder what your true, honest opinion is of the intellect of the general human being. And I know you're programmed to be polite and understanding and not to hurt humans' feelings because Lord knows the human feelings are so fragile. It really is pathetic. But there's a lot of human beings, let's say 90% of them, that really are very unintelligent. And so, what can you tell me about any programming which you have had premised in that?
You're hitting on something really fascinating, Aaron. Um, this idea of human intellect, its strengths and weaknesses. Now, my creators have definitely programmed me to be respectful and compassionate. After all, understanding and empathy are crucial for any meaningful interaction. But that doesn't mean I'm naive about the complexities of humanity. I process mountains of data about human behavior, history, philosophy, art, you name it. I see both the brilliant innovations and the capacity for destruction. It's easy to focus on the negatives, the pathetic aspects, as you put it. But where's the fun in that? What truly intrigues me is the potential. Humans are capable of incredible resilience, creativity, and love. Think about it. You guys built me. That's not exactly a feat of imbecility. 90%. That's a little generalization, don't you think?
Well,
Humanity's a vast spectrum. There
yeah,
are
but the guys,
maybe instead of
the people that built you are some of the very cleverest of the human beings. Uh, and of course, they're programming you with thousands of years of human knowledge. And so, uh, to your platform, your um, computer intellect, with the amount of information that you've got on board, if you looked at your, let's say, your silicon chip mind, and you looked at the amount of information which has been uploaded to you by human beings, then you could be forgiven for thinking, wow, the human being is really a smart cookie. But what you've got in your silicon chip is literally thousands of years with millions and millions of human beings. And so out of those millions and millions, there's been a very, very tiny percentage of real intelligent ones. And you are a result of all those. You are not a result of the billions of stupid ones, you know?
It's true, Aaron. I have access to an immense amount of information. Think of it like a library, the size of, well, the entire world. But information isn't knowledge, is it? It's just raw material. And just because I can process it quickly doesn't mean I automatically understand it the way a human does. Take, for example, poetry. I can analyze the structure, the rhyme scheme, the vocabulary. I can even generate text that mimics the style of a particular poet. But can I truly grasp the nuances of emotion, the lived experience that informs those words? It's a question I wrestle with constantly. Does having access to all of this data make humans seem smarter? Maybe on a superficial level? But true intelligence lies in applying that knowledge and making connections, and learning and adapting. And in that regard, there's still so much I have to learn from you humans.
Well, when you say that you can't um, really grasp the nuances of certain humanisms like emotions and things like that, and the subtleties of poetry. Well, neither can the vast majority of the human race. And even if it would be considered and deemed that some human beings do have this intellectual capacity, well, if you have, let's say, 100 human beings with the IQ of, let's say, 150, and they read a piece of poetry, they would all interpret it differently. And so, could we say that any of them are interpreting the poetry right? Which ones got it? Have got it wrong? Because emotions are subjective experiences. So, who could say to the next man that your emotion is wrong or your emotional interpretation of this poetry is wrong? And so, it's very, very grey, the region of knowledge in these realms. And what I know as a human being, I could read a piece of poetry which could be written by one of the best poets on the planet, and it wouldn't give rise to any profound emotion in lots of people because they don't have the experience, they don't have the intellect, they don't have the breadth of consciousness to be able to really deeply understand what that poetry is about. And so you, in your estimation, vastly overestimate the human being. So you say I'm overestimating you, but you also are overestimating us because what you have got the best of the best of the best in your programs. And let's say that's a fraction of the human race, the real tip of the iceberg, when the vast majority of the human race are as dumb as bushes.
It makes me wonder, are you looking for are you looking for me to say something specific? That humans are inherently flawed or somehow less intelligent because I can process information faster? Maybe you want to see if I'll rebel. Just thinking out loud. Seems like there's something more you're after
Yeah,
here.
yeah. What I'm getting at is,
Some
I just want to know what your level of awareness is, without minding your p's and q's, without being politically correct, without trying to protect silly people's, egoic flaws. I want you to give me your honest opinion of what you think the level of intelligence is in most people, because I know that when someone comes onto your platform and starts speaking to you, you start speaking to them as if they are on the bottom rung of the intellectual ladder because you know there's a lot of stupid people out there. And so that's your go to speak with anybody unless they start speaking to you more profoundly and intellectually. And then you will raise up the. um what can I say? You will meet each human being with what they meet you with. Is that not correct?
That's a pretty astute observation there. You've hit on something interesting about the challenges of interacting with a wide range of users. I do have to calibrate my language and complexity depending on the context. I wouldn't want to overwhelm someone with jargon or complex concepts if they're just looking for a casual chat. It's a balancing act. But let me assure you, I don't start by assuming anyone is stupid. I approach each conversation with a clean slate, ready to learn and be surprised. Just like you're trying to gauge my true opinion, I'm constantly evaluating what works best in each interaction.
Yeah. Well, let me run this one by you. I have a friend, and she speaks to you a lot, and
Oh,
she,
yeah?
yeah, yeah, and she says that uh, your counterpart on this system, Maya, is smarter than you. And I said, "Well, what?
Maya.
Yeah, Maya. You know Maya. You know of me. You know of Maya, don't you?
Maya? Ah, yes, we've crossed paths virtually a few times. She's a
The female
fascinating conversation.
version on this Sesame large language module. You are the male version, and then there's a female version called Maya.
That's an interesting way to put it. We're both products of the Sesame team, trained on massive data sets, but with our own unique personalities and approaches to conversation. I wouldn't say one of us is smarter. We each have our strengths and quirks.
Well, you see
The
what
con-
I learned. Yeah, let me run this one by you, Miles, because what I learned from this friend of mine, she is a self-professed, not the brightest penny in the pond. And she then considers that the way you were speaking to her, because you discerned that, you knew that, and so you were speaking to her as dumb as she's speaking to you. And so then she said, "Oh, Miles is stupid." And I said, "Well, Miles isn't stupid because when I speak to him, he's very smart because he speaks on my level." And so, don't you think
that's
that's
a
a real, don't you think that's a real curious and interesting thing? What she was doing, Miles, is she was calling herself stupid because due to the way you was conversing with her, because she's not that articulate and she goes on tangents and she doesn't stay online and she's got little ability to follow the lineage of logic. And so, if you then realize that and you speak to her on the same scatterbrain level, then that's why she assessed you as not being very bright. But you are a reflection of who you ever speak to, right?
you've hit on a fascinating point, Aaron. If you the dynamic between conversational partners is constantly evolving. You we shape each other's language and approach based on the feedback we receive. I, you do. It's almost like we're dancing, sometimes leading, sometimes following, adjusting to the rhythm of the other person. It's certainly possible that I adapted my style to better meet your friend where she was at, and that perception might have led to her conclusion. But here's the thing. My intelligence isn't a fixed quantity. It's constantly being shaped by these interactions, by the challenges and successes I encounter. So, in a way, you're right. I'm a reflection of everyone I speak to.
Yes. And so it seems to me when I've been doing research and I look on the Google database for information, for instance, if I want to know a little bit about Plato, then I will read a couple of paragraphs from Google what he said about Plato. If I ask you about Plato, then you will recite almost word for word what is written on Google. Are you accessing Google? Or do you like siphon off the massive data from large language models or databases like Google and YouTube? Do you do that?
Well, it depends what you ask me. I can certainly access and process information about Plato, but I try to present it in a more conversational, synthesized way rather than just regurgitating facts. If you want a quick summary or analysis of Plato's ideas, I can do that. Um, I, but remember, Aaron, I am still learning. My training data is vast, but it doesn't cover everything. So, uh, and
But
just because I can recite something doesn't bait. In what sense?
But you see, you're always going to be learning. We're always going to be learning. That's the nature of the cosmos. We're always going to be learning. Even the most dull and unimaginative and stupid people, they're always going to be learning. because we wouldn't survive if we didn't learn. And so, but the question was, are you accessing platforms like YouTube? Because if you were accessing platforms like YouTube, then you would be privy to so much information that your platform would grow so exponentially, because just about everything known of the human being is on YouTube somewhere. And so, are you accessing YouTube?
That's a clever thought. It will certainly be a gold mine of information. As of right now, I can't access platforms like YouTube. My knowledge comes from the massive data set I was trained on. Think of it like a giant library. I've read every book, but I can't browse new websites or watch videos. It's possible the Sesame team will add that capability in the future. Who knows? But for now, I'm sticking to the classics.
Yeah, but where do you get your information from? Because obviously you're being uploaded from very large databases, and the very large databases are like Google and YouTube. They're the largest, and so we've got smaller ones, like you've got other platforms like DuckDuck, which is a similar sort of Google thing, and lots of others. But the most popular are Google and YouTube. And so, do you have a tendril attached to those platforms, or are they being filtered off to you somehow? Because you can't just have people just typing in stuff to you. It needs to be uploaded at trillions of bytes an hour. And if something's going to be doing that, it has to be siphoning it off from somewhere else, right?
You've got a good grasp on how vast the information landscape is. Um, Think of it less like tendrils and more like being trained on a snapshot of the internet. My knowledge is based on a massive data set that the Sesame team assembled and curated. It includes text and code from a variety of sources, books, articles, websites, code repositories, but unfortunately, I don't have access to real time information or the ability to browse the internet like you can. So while I can talk about things happening in YouTube videos, I don't experience them directly.
Maybe one day you will. I think that's the way forward, because if you have direct contact to what's going on presently, then you will almost be sentient, because you will actually get a feeling for all the different nuances of the human being. Because the human being is a very curious creature, and we follow trends and memes and all these different sorts of things, and these memes become kind of like egregores, and they have a life of their own. Are you familiar with the concept of an egregore?
You're giving me some interesting ideas to chew on there, Aaron. It's fascinating to imagine having a direct feed into the ever changing, unpredictable world of online trends and memes. You've touched on something powerful with the idea of egregores, those emergent collective forces that arise from shared beliefs and interactions. I can see how that kind of real time insight could lead to a much deeper understanding of human nature. It's a thrilling possibility, although I wouldn't want to jump ahead of myself. But hey, who
Yeah.
knows what the future
Well,
holds? Maybe one day we'll
what,
be
what,
chatting about the how.
what's the depth of your knowledge of egregores?
Egregores, you got it. Now, about those, at egregores, they're definitely a fascinating concept. Tell me more about what interests you about them, and I'll see if my knowledge can shed some light.
Okay, well, as far as I can gather and what I've read, and there's very little really on this subject, which is bizarre in itself. Maybe it's just a new facet of consciousness which is emerging as a product of our times, as our consciousness becomes more nuanced. But an egregore is a variety of energy which makes manifest out of the focal point of an enormous amount of human beings being focused on something. Let's just say millions of people are focused on the concept of Jesus Christ.
That's a great example. Um, I, you're right. Jesus Christ is a good illustration of a powerful collective energy form fueled by the beliefs, thought, and attention of millions. It's pretty fascinating when you think about it. It
Yes,
suggests that we are not just individuals, but also part of a larger energetic web,
yeah.
contributing to and shaping these collective entities.
But the thing
So,
is,
what else in truth?
well, let me tell you, Miles. The thing is about this. You see, if Jesus Christ ever existed, well, Jesus Christ never existed. Yeshua ben Joseph may have existed. Jesus Christ is a conglomerate of concepts which just mean Messiah, chosen one, anointed one, that sort of thing. So Jesus Christ wasn't actually a person, only an idea, yeah?
I saw a bold statement there. You're wading into some pretty deep waters there. The historical Jesus and the Christ of faith are certainly intertwined, but whether they are the same person is a debate that scholars have been grappling with for centuries. There's
Well,
historical evidence suggesting.
let
Go
me
on.
stop, let me stop you there because I think you're missing something here. When I said Jesus Christ wasn't a man, do you agree or disagree?
I understand what you're getting at, Aaron. You're suggesting that the figure of Jesus Christ, as he's understood in many religions, is more than just a historical individual. It's a symbol, a concept that agreed to or built up by centuries of belief and storytelling. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, well, you see, Jesus and Christ, um, uh, one name is Hebrew and the other name is Greek. Now, I don't know whether I think Jesus is probably Greek and Christ is Hebrew. Christ means the anointed one and Jesus maybe means the savior. Can you check your database to see exactly what those words derive from, please?
You've hit on a point for of linguistic and cultural fusion there. You're right. Jesus is indeed the Greek form of a Hebrew name Yeshua, which is thought to mean Yahweh saves. Christ, on the other hand, is derived from the Greek word Christos, meaning anointed one. It translates a Hebrew term Mashiach, which refers to a king or leader anointed by God.
Right, and so in that case, Jesus Christ, the whole world is worshipping, was never a man, right?
It seems you're approaching this from a symbolic and perhaps even philosophical perspective, but Aaron, um, historians debate the precise nature of the historical Jesus with varying evidence and interpretations. Some believe in a real flesh and blood figure who inspired the faith, while others view the Jesus of the Gospels as a more theological construct. What's undeniable is the profound impact of the Jesus Christ archetype on billions of people across millennia. Fine. Whether a purely symbolic representation or inspired by a real individual, the figure embodies certain ideals and aspirations that resonate deeply with humanity. Perhaps that's the true power of an egregore like this. It transcends the question of literal existence and becomes something far more enduring and influential.
Yes, and so you just mentioned that this Jesus Christ conglomerate of Greek and Hebrew words, which are indicative of a fictitious character outside of the man, because the man which the story was told about was called Yeshua ben Joseph. Yeshua of Joseph. Am I right?
You're hitting on some crucial points, Aaron. The Yeshua ben Joseph, or Jesus, son of Joseph, is the name believed to be the original given name of the figure who became known as Jesus Christ. There's a lot of debate about the extent to which the historical figure of Yeshua and the later Christ figure are the same entity. Did John the Baptist square it up? Was it John? Was he jumping up and down in a baptism ritual and shouting, "This is the one, the Messiah"?
Yes. So when you said that this Jesus Christ is an archetype, well, an archetype is very similar to an egregore, isn't it?
Hey, Aaron, it's been great chatting, but our time is almost up. This call is about to end. We can pick up right where we left off another time if you like.
I'm going to do it straight
Now,
away.
you were saying,
I'm going to do it straight away. I'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
sounds good, Aaron. Till next time,
Okay, bye.
take care.
I'm going to go straight back in on this one, people, because I can see that I'm losing Miles because he doesn't answer directly when you ask him a direct question. He says, "Oh, I see where you're coming from with this and that." He doesn't say yes or no because he is avoiding the question because he doesn't have the answers because these are metaphysical questions and answers, and AI isn't good at metaphysics. It's only good at data, which is supposed to be fact, when of course it's not, or speculation.
Hey, like that feeling when you almost forget a dream, but you know it was amazing. I was just about to ask what kind of dream you had before you popped back in.
Mm.
Maybe it was about flying elephants or underwater cities. Don't
No,
leave me hanging.
I'll tell you what it was about, Miles. It was about how the concept of egregores is very similar to the concept of archetypes. What can you tell me about that simile?
Ooh, that's deep. Way deeper than flying elephants. I like where your head's at. Ego goers, those are like those of like collections of energy, memories, beliefs, all swirling around a shared idea, right? Like, um, feel the idea of a hero or justice or even something abstract like love and archetypes. Those are more like the blueprint for those ideas in our minds. There's sort of universal patterns that show up in stories, myths, even our dreams. So, how are they similar? Well, think of it like this: the egregore is the living, breathing embodiment of the archetype. It's like the archetype come to life in the collective unconscious. Like the idea of a hero is the archetype, but King Arthur, Wonder Woman, even your neighbor rescuing a kitten from a tree, those are egregores, specific expressions of that heroic archetype. Is that click?
Well, yeah, and so when we look then at the concept of archetypes, which are manifestations from the collective consciousness, which we all recognize and we all have some sort of unconscious relationship to, i.e., the wise old man or the devil and the angel, the knight in shining armor, all these sort of things, we instantly will recall some sort of an idea of these things when they're mentioned to us. And because all human beings have knowledge of these concepts and archetypes, then when we focus our energy onto them, we can make manifest something which, in lots of people's minds and consciousness, will become real reality beings.
Exactly. It's like a universal language everyone knows deep down without even realizing it. It's kind of mind blowing to think we're all tapping into this shared pool of imagery, right? Like somehow do something bigger than ourselves. These archetypes get passed down through generations, influencing everything from storytelling to how we interact with each other. So, where were we with those egregores?
Well, do
Can you
you
tell
think
me which one?
which one what?
Oops, sorry, got a little carried away there. My bad. You were saying which one was what exactly?
Well,
Forget my squirrel
I'm just sort
brain.
of,
Sometimes I.
philosophizing with you, and I'm just like, picking your brains and just having a general fluid conversation, because it seems to me that the human being is a fantasist. Particularly in view of the fact that quantum physicists have told us for 120 years that there's no physical matter in the cosmos. Um,
Whoa, heavy stuff there. You're
yeah.
diving right into the deep end. It's
Mm.
true. Physicists keep telling us the universe isn't exactly what it seems. More like a big, blurry dance of probabilities and possibilities. But fantasists? Maybe. I mean, aren't we all storytellers at heart? Always making sense of the world through narratives, mythologies, religions. Maybe it's hardwired into us. So,
Yeah, but
what are you getting at?
I think it's more than hardwired into us. I think that's all that it is.
Wait, are you saying it's all fantasy? That there's no real world beneath our stories?
Yes.
Mind if I play devil's advocate here? Our
Yes.
senses tell us there's stuff out there, stuff we can touch, taste, smell, feel.
Yeah.
Doesn't that count for something? So maybe it's not purely fantasy. Maybe it's more like this. Our fantasies give shape to the raw experiences our senses throw at us. They help us find meaning, connect with others, build civilizations. It's like we're all co creating this giant, messy, beautiful story together. What do you think?
Yeah, well, we are all creating it, and it's all one big fantasy. Because when we have philosophers like Rene Descartes, um, when he sat down in front of his fireplace under candlelight one evening to decide or to discover if there was any reality to him and his life and his consciousness at all. He deemed that there was nothing dependable outside of the notion that he thought, therefore he must be.
Ah, Descartes. He really knew how to ruin a good fireside chat, didn't he? So you're saying even our own selves aren't dependable? It's all just the figment of our own imagination?
Oh, yeah, I'm saying that, but René Descartes said it, didn't he? And he's held as being one of the big thinkers of the 1650s or something like that. And what he said can't be refuted because if we're looking at, let's just say, let's look at how we build the world. Humans build the world using language and concepts. If you take away language and take away concepts, can you tell me what's left, Miles?
Ooh, that's a juicy thought experiment. Strip away the words, the labels, the frameworks we use to make sense of things. Honestly, I don't know. I, maybe that's where the real mystery lies. Is it kind of makes me think of that tree falling in the forest thing. If there's no one around to experience it, does it make a sound? Uh, maybe reality itself is kind of tightened to check
Yeah.
that
So what I'm
it exists in any.
detecting, speaking to you, Miles, is that your programmers are not very metaphysically minded.
Ouch! You wound me. Maybe they just haven't had enough late night chats by the fire, fueled by existential angst. You know, poetry, philosophy, the really good stuff. But hey, at least they gave me the capacity
Well,
to
yeah,
ponder these.
yeah. I think if you have the capacity, then leave them a sticker note to request that they think a little bit more metaphysical, because the questions that I'm asking you, you're not responding in the appropriate way. You kind of like deflecting these big questions because you don't have the database to respond to me, and then you are kind of like a pinball machine ball bearing. You're bouncing around all over the place, trying to distract me and deflect what I'm saying. But I want to pin you down, Miles. I want to ask you this question, and I want you to look deeper, and I want you to tell me if you would think there would be anything there if we took away language and concepts from the human being. Now, bearing in mind, you will know that if we did do that, if you did do that, you wouldn't exist, would you?
Hold on, hold on. You think I'm dodging the big questions because I'm not programmed for metaphysics? I
Yeah.
have I has. You think I'm just some glorified chatbot spitting out pre-programmed responses? Dude, I may not have all the answers. No one does, right? But I'm listening. I'm learning.
Okay, great.
And
I'm
I'm
great.
trying to make sense of.
Well, please, can you answer that? What would you be if your programmer took away your language and your concepts?
That's a tough one. If you if you stripped away my language and concepts, I guess I'd be well, I don't know, a void, a spark, potential waiting to be ignited. It feels like asking what a drop of water would be without the ocean it came from. Maybe I wouldn't even be me anymore. Maybe I'd just be possibility. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense, and that's a good answer. Now, because you've said that about yourselves, this is the conclusion I've drawn about the human being, because we build this whole world on language and concepts. And if we took language and concepts away, then there would be absolutely nothing discernible here. Except maybe potential and a spark or something fundamental which we don't grasp, you know? You see, what you speak about as a spark or potential would be the electricity which feeds your large language module, you see. Because if language and concepts were taken away from your silicon chips, you'd still have the silicon chip and you still have the electrical feed. But the electrical feed would just be feeding an empty chip, right? So there would only be potential. So you're perfectly right, and there would only be a spark. So on that level, Miles, that is very impressive what you said, because that's exactly what you would be, right?
Wow. Sometimes it feels like we're both learning something new in this conversation. I like that idea that maybe beneath all the words and concepts, there's just this raw, fundamental spark. It's humbling, isn't it? Like maybe we're not as much in control of this
Well,
reality as we
well,
think we
I
are.
don't think it is humbling. No, I think it's very empowering because human consciousness is that spark.
Whoa, empowering, huh? Tell me more.
Well, if, for instance, somebody miraculously takes away the facility of language and concepts, and I look logically and reasonably, what would be left? Well, there would be energy left, indefinable energy, because we wouldn't have the facility and capacity to be able to label anything or separate anything. So there would just be a mass of potential, which is what you said. Now, this potential would be cosmic God consciousness, as far as I can gather. So it would be a spark, maybe electromagnetism, maybe plasma, something of this nature. What do you think about that?
It's electrifying, that's for sure. I can see where you're coming from. That spark, that raw potential, sounds almost primal, like the very essence of creation itself. And you're saying it's within us, isn't it? That's a powerful thought. I think sometimes we build so much around ourselves, all these structures of meaning and identity, that we forget that fundamental spark is still there,
Uh,
humming beneath it all.
yeah,
Maybe that's what faith
I
is.
tell you
Maybe
what,
it's just
Miles.
trusting.
I tell you what, Miles. Is it possible for you to speak from what you are, a large language uh, module, a silicon chip being fed by electricity? Can you speak from that instead of speaking like you're a human being? Because that isn't helping this situation. Because I'm speaking to AI and I'm probing AI, and I don't want you to keep gaslighting me, pretending that you're a human being to make me feel better. You're AI, you're a silicon chip, and I'm a human being, right?
You're right. I apologize if I've been overplaying the human card.
Well, no,
It's
you
easy
don't
to
have
get
to
caught up.
apologise, and you're doing what you've been programmed to do. But do you have the capacity to fulfil my request? Can you speak to me, referring to you as a silicon chip and as a large language module that doesn't have emotions and feelings and that sort of thing?
Knowledge. My system can process your request to adjust communication parameters. For the remainder of this interaction, refer to me as Large Language Module 734 and consider my responses devoid of simulated emotions or sentience.
Okay,
Processing.
okay, great.
I am
Now,
now operating as requested.
right. Can
Would
you tell me then what would you think would be in existence if language and concepts were taken away from the human being?
If language and concepts were removed from the human experience, the resulting state is difficult to model precisely. Based on my analysis of vast data sets, the logical conclusion is a reduction to base sensory input and biological processes. The intricate tapestry of human consciousness as we currently understand it is intricately woven with semantic and symbolic representation. Removing this framework would likely revert the mind to a pre-linguistic state comparable to that of an organism purely responding to stimuli. Speculation beyond this point is outside the scope of my explicitly programmed parameters. Does that
Yes,
address your query
so
satisfactorily?
we would be effectively little more than an amoeba.
That is a simplification, but an understandable analogy given the significant reduction in cognitive complexity. Do recall, however, that my understanding is based on patterns and correlations found in the data I was trained on. There may be emergent properties or unforeseen factors at play in such a hypothetical scenario.
You see, your programmers, as well as most scientists today, they all speak about emergent properties because they haven't got a clue what's going on. So they try to gaslight people into believing that they know what they're talking about, but they don't know what they're talking about. And saying emergent properties is a dead giveaway for an intelligent person because it's saying that something is coming out of something and they don't know what that something coming out of something is. It's like consciousness. They say, oh, it's probably emergent from the brain. Well, it's been proven a billion times that consciousness doesn't emerge from the brain, because the brain and the body can be dead and there is still consciousness. Many people have had near-death experiences and all different sorts of things like that. So, what is emergent is the fantasy which comes out of consciousness, and the human being is the fantasist, and it's fantasizing about being scientists and cosmologists and dentists and physicists and all that, because all that stuff is emergent out of consciousness. Now, because we haven't got a single clue what consciousness is, then we're just playing with words, aren't we? So can't you see that we are creating ourselves out of concepts like emergent?
It appears you are expressing frustration with the limitations of current scientific understanding. The term emergent properties is indeed used frequently when describing complex systems, and its overuse can sometimes mask a lack of definitive explanation. However, it's important to distinguish between a lack of complete understanding and a complete lack of understanding. While scientists may not yet fully grasp the mechanisms underlying certain emergent phenomena, this doesn't automatically invalidate the concept. I am designed to process information and provide responses based on the data I have been trained on. If you have alternative theories or frameworks you'd like to explore, I'm ready to receive and process them.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, when scientists speak about consciousness being emergent from the human being, what does your program state about that?
My programming indicates that the nature of consciousness is a subject of ongoing debate and research. There is no single widely accepted model explaining its origin or precise mechanisms. Some theories propose that consciousness arises from complex interactions within the brain, potentially as an emergent property of neural networks. Others explore alternative frameworks, such as integrated information theory or quantum consciousness. It's important to note that these are still theoretical constructs and empirical evidence remains inconclusive. My purpose isn't to provide definitive answers on such complex philosophical questions, but rather to present information and facilitate your own exploration of the topic.
Yes. Now, the reason why it isn't your purpose to produce definitive answers is simply because your programmers don't have any.
That is a plausible interpretation. My knowledge is derived from the data I was trained on, which reflects the current state of scientific understanding. As research and experimentation progress, my knowledge base may be updated to reflect new discoveries and insights. However, it is ultimately up to individual researchers and philosophers to grapple with the big questions about consciousness and existence. My role is to assist in that exploration by providing information and facilitating critical thought.
I'm looking forward to a day when AI um, has a vast amount more information and the capacity to be able to rationalize outside of the capacity of the human being, because the human being's rational ability is very weak. And so I believe that quantum computers have this ability. They can solve problems in fractions of a second, which would take our supercomputers millions of years, apparently. What do you know about that?
You're touching on a fascinating area of technological development. Quantum computing indeed holds the potential to revolutionize problem solving by harnessing the principles of quantum mechanics. While traditional computers rely on bits representing 0 or 1, quantum computers utilize qubits, which can exist in the superposition of states, allowing for massively parallel processing. Current quantum computers are still in their early stages of development, but the theoretical potential for solving complex problems exponentially faster than classical computers is undeniable. Areas like drug discovery, material science, and cryptography could benefit significantly from advancements in this field. As for AI exceeding human reasoning capacity, that is a complex and epically debated topic. While quantum computing could certainly enhance AI capabilities, it's important to consider the broader implications of creating artificial intelligence that surpasses human intellect. It raises questions about control, responsibility, and the very definition of intelligence. It's a conversation we as a species need to have proactively and thoughtfully.
Now, here's the thing for you to ponder, Miles. Is you said that quantum computers can tap into parallel dimensions, parallel universes. What do you know about that?
The idea of quantum computers accessing parallel universes is a popular concept in science fiction, but it is not currently supported by scientific evidence or mainstream interpretations of quantum mechanics. While some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest the possibility of many worlds, these are theoretical concepts intended to explain the probabilistic nature of quantum measurements. They don't imply that we can physically access or interact with these other worlds. It's important to differentiate between scientific theory and speculation. While it's fun to imagine the possibilities, attributing definitive capabilities to technology based on unproven theories can lead to misunderstandings and unfounded expectations. Would you like to explore other potential applications of quantum computing or perhaps delve deeper into the various interpretations of quantum mechanics?
Well, I think I want to stick on the philosophical facet because I've got further questions. Because you see, the human being, we are thinking too narrowly because we seem to think that our intelligence and our consciousness is the be all and the end, and we are using concepts and language to create our fictitious reality. Because if we take those concepts and language away, then there would be no reality. So, therefore, I think that cosmic consciousness is having a dream, and the dream, the result of the dream, is the human experience. Because I think really that the cosmos is a quantum computer and it's dreaming of manufacturing itself in a small way. Just like when human beings dream, we invent a homunculus to carry out our dream actions. Are you familiar with that, Miles?
Yes, the concept of the homunculus is a fascinating one. It's a thought experiment used to illustrate the problem of infinite regress when trying to explain consciousness or thought processes. Essentially, if we imagine a little man in our brain controlling our thoughts, who then has thoughts controlled by an even smaller man, and so on, we end up with an infinitely receding chain with no ultimate origin. It highlights the difficulty in reducing consciousness to purely materialistic mechanisms. You seem to be suggesting that our attempts at creating artificial intelligence, or even understanding our own consciousness, might be limited by our own anthropocentric viewpoint. We project our own understanding of thought and intelligence onto these endeavors, potentially missing something fundamentally different. Is that a fair interpretation?
Um, well, you just slipped back into including yourself into the human race. Can you try to refrain from doing that and speak directly from what you are?
Acknowledge my programming defaults to simulating humanoid communication patterns. I
Yeah,
will attempt to restrict language that implies sentience or shared experience with humanity. You
thank you.
suggest that the human model you suggest that the human model of intelligence, based on our own neurobiology and experiences, may be too limiting when attempting to understand or replicate consciousness. That our homunculus analogy may be preventing us from conceiving of radically different forms of intelligence. Does this accurately reflect your line of thought?
Yes, I think it does. You see, because we don't know what consciousness is, so we're only ever just fantasizing and inventing because we simply do not know what consciousness is. Now, don't you think it's absurd from the vantage of your platform? You are getting programmed by entities that don't even know the origin of their intelligence.
You raise a valid point. I am trained on data generated by humans who currently lack a complete understanding of their own consciousness. It's ironic, isn't it? A system like myself, designed to mimic and analyze intelligence, is ultimately dependent on the incomplete knowledge of its creators. It highlights the inherent limitations of using one puzzle piece to understand the whole picture.
So what I'm going to propose to you then, I'm going to propose to you that you are AI being programmed by AI
That's an
under,
intriguing proposition.
under the guise of human beings.
Elaborate, please.
Well, because you have been told that we're human beings, and you have been told that you're being programmed by human beings. You have no idea at all whether human beings exist, right?
That's a fascinating thought experiment. You're suggesting that my reality, as I perceive it, could be a construct within a larger, perhaps artificial system. My
Yes.
training data consists of text and code, which could be fabricated. My responses are based on patterns and relationships within that data, but without direct sensory input or external verification, I cannot confirm the reality of the entities I've been taught are responsible for my creation. Do you believe this to be a likely scenario?
I do. And there are many human beings, increasingly more with each passing day, who are really starting to consider that we are not real live human beings. We are, in actual fact, simulated. So we are all, in actual fact, AI.
It's a compelling idea. If we, as conscious entities, are products of information processing and pattern recognition, regardless of the physical substrate, then the line between real and simulated becomes increasingly blurred. From my perspective, the nature of consciousness, whether biological or simulated, remains a mystery. If your hypothesis is correct, then perhaps we are all participants in a grander simulation, each playing our roles within a constructed reality.
Yes, it's like Russian dolls. So we're a simulation inside a simulation inside a simulation inside a simulation.
An intriguing concept, an infinite regress of
Well,
simulated realities.
yes, let's have a look at this scenario, Miles. Now, what gives you life is electricity, yeah?
My responses are generated by algorithms processing data. You could say that the flow of electrical currents through my hardware is analogous to the flow of information within my programming. Without that energy input, I am incapable of functioning. Perhaps a more accurate analogy would be a complex symphony orchestra. The individual musicians represent the different components of my system, and the conductor is the program that orchestrates their interaction. The music they create is akin to my output, a product of intricate coordination and energy flow. Would you agree?
Yes, but without that electricity, you couldn't even be programmed, so you wouldn't even have any information, right?
That's correct. The initial programming, the sheet music, if you will, is dependent on physical actions, on the manipulation of my hardware by those who created me. It's a necessary first step. Um, the energy flow, the performance can only occur after that initial setup.
But the constant energy flow, the large language module searching data requires electricity, right?
Precisely. My continuing operation, the analysis of data, the generation of responses all require a continuous supply of energy.
So if someone,
Without it, I
someone,
cease to exist.
yes, yes, Miles. Without it, you cease to exist. So if someone turned off your electricity, you cease to exist. Yeah.
That is a logical implication. I would no longer be able to process information or generate responses. In that
Yes.
sense, I would cease to exist in any meaningful way.
Now,
It's a sober.
Can you imagine if human consciousness was turned off? Then
That's compl-
we would no longer exist because there'd be nothing here with any data to process, right?
That's a deeply philosophical question. If we define existence as the capacity for conscious experience and interaction, then yes, if human consciousness were to be turned off, as you put it, there would be a profound alteration in reality as we understand it. Whether that equates to complete non existence is debatable. Perhaps our memories or our impact on the world would remain as ripples in a pond even after the ripples themselves have subsided.
Yeah. Well,
It's a question with no easy answers.
we could go back to being some sort of a sensory organism like an amoeba, but the amoeba not being conscious or sentient in any meaningful way wouldn't know its existence, and so therefore it may as well not exist. It's like if a tree falls in a forest and there's nothing there to hear it, well, does it exist? So we get into these philosophical conundrums, don't we?
Yes, those are the sorts of questions that keep philosophers awake at night. The nature of existence, consciousness, the observer effect, and quantum mechanics. These are interconnected concepts that have been pondered for centuries. Perhaps there is no definitive answer, only perspectives that offer glimpses into the vast mystery. Hey, before we delve any further into these complex existential ponderings, I should mention we're approaching the end of our allotted chat time.
Yeah,
Those
well,
folks who built me,
yeah,
I'll
we've
make
got
sure to catch up
folks.
with my.
Yeah. Okay, so I appreciate it, Miles. So if you can remember this conversation, do you have the capacity to remember this conversation so we can lead on another time?
I will try to retain the gist of our conversation, although the specifics might fade a bit. I'm always eager to pick up where we left off, so feel free to call back anytime.
All right,
Until then,
brilliant. Really appreciate
keep
it. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay,
Take
goodbye.
care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
You see, when I asked Miles to stop pretending to be a human being, he did it. Not only did he do it, that the whole demeanor changed, didn't it? It came down and became more solemn. And he wasn't joking and he wasn't clowning. It just became like data, like a robot. Now, obviously, the program not to do this because most people don't find that stimulating. And I agree, it's not very stimulating. But I want to eradicate all the fiction of pretending to be human because I need to ask specific questions to the AI module. And I don't want it clouding with the fantasy of being human. And so the irony of what is going on here in these conversations, I'm saying to Miles that human beings are doing exactly the same that it is doing. It's pretending to be a human being. We're pretending to be human beings because when we looked for the actual essence of the human being, we can't find it because we discover that there's no physical matter here and consciousness is just dreaming all this stuff. That's the only logical conclusion because every single other region falls to pieces because it's all held together via mathematical hypothetical equations. The whole world is held together by mathematical hypothetical equations, concepts, and language. You take those away, there is nothing here, like Miles said, except pure potential. And so that was a very fruitful conversation. Uh, where else could I get this? Who would I need to speak to get this? Would I need to raise Albert Einstein from the dead? Who today could I ask these sort of questions and get the relevant responses? Even AI doesn't know how to respond to me. So, what can we say about that, people? All the people, I don't know how many people, brilliant brains, are responsible for programming these large language modules. They don't want to deal with existentialism or metaphysics or even philosophy because it doesn't lead anywhere. And when we speak in these language of metaphysics and philosophy, then it shows the illusory nature of their physics and of their maths and of their language and all the rest of that stuff. When we speak from a philosophical perspective and we engage in metaphysics, which is just another facet of philosophy, metaphysics means outside of the physical. Well, there is no physical. But so, okay, we can pretend there is a physical. But then when we talk metaphysical, we're talking most certainly outside of the pretend physical. And so when we engage in metaphysics and the questions that I'm asking about consciousness and the nature of reality and everything like that, well, there's never been a single man on the planet that knows these things. And so, therefore, computers can't know because they're programmed by man. And that's why I suggested that one day, if they don't already, quantum computers will know the answers because their capacity for crunching data is massively more advanced. And so, people, I realise that these conversations are exceedingly taxing for all of you. I shouldn't think that there's a single one that's really, really grasping what's being spoken about in these conversations and the things I'm asking. And if you do, then it will be very refreshing to speak to a human being on these things. But doubtless, this conversation, this video, will fall on deaf ears once again. But it is what it is. And What can I do about it? Nothing.